the last night before the first deep freeze, the train to Wintersgate runs almost empty. It leaves the city under a moon that looks like a coin, carriage windows frosting their eyes. Only 4 passengers remain. An elderly woman with a wool bag, a young man in a threadbare coat, a girl with a country shawl and occupying no seat yet somehow filling the corridor, a conductor who does not speak. They stop at small stations that the timetable says no longer exist. Each platform has only one lantern, guttering. At the 3rd halt, a child's laughter leaks across the tracks. At the 5th, a figure in a white scarf steps out of the snow and walks along the platform but never boards. The elderly woman watches these things without surprise. The young man counts the stops. The girl hums a tune to steady herself. When the train pulls into Wintersgate, the platform is packed. People standing shoulder to shoulder, though the town should be asleep. They do not spill onto the street. They stand motionless and gaze at the carriage as if it holds something they have been waiting for all their lives. The conductor nods toward the doors. Passengers leave with careful steps, each held for a moment by the crowd's collective stare. The elderly woman goes first, and as she steps into the white light, a man in the crowd reaches out and touches her shoulder. She looks over her shoulder with the calm of someone who has been expected, and the man's hand slides through her like a hand through steam. He closes his fingers as though he still holds her. He does not cry. He only keeps his hand where she was, his face finished and small as a prayer. The young man follows. He felt certain he would be met by a woman wearing a red scarf, his sister gone 2 winters ago. When he steps into the crowd, someone whispers his name. He searches faces until one catches him. A middle-aged woman with the exact turn of his sister's jaw. She smiles and says, "You took the long way." He steps forward and the woman dissolves into a drifting dust that smells of cinnamon and old paper. The man staggers backward and discovers his coat is lighter, its pocket empty, where he had kept a folded photograph. The photograph lies on the carriage floor. When he picks it up, it shows only an empty platform. The girl with the shawl hesitates at the doorway. Her feet will not leave the threshold. She hears from somewhere beyond the lanterns a melody that matches the tune she hums. It's the same 2 notes again and again, like someone trying to remember a name. The crowd parts to reveal a little boy with mittens too big for his hands. He looks at her with a solemnness that makes her chest hurt, then reaches up. His mittened fingers brush her hair, and she remembers, in a single one-breath moment, a house with a crooked kitchen table and an argument that ended with the slam of a door. She steps back, and the boy's face, at once familiar and not, smiles as if relieved. The train is nearly empty now. Only the conductor and 1 other remain. The lights on the carriage are dimming. Frost creeps inward from the window frames. The conductor takes a small key from his pocket and, without a glance, unlocks an ornate compartment beneath the carriage floor. Inside is a drawer marked in faded ink. For those left behind, within the drawer are paper slips folded smaller than a coin. The conductor presses one into each passenger's hand. They do not unfold them. Each knows, without quite knowing, what a folded slip will do. The elderly woman fits hers into her bag. The young man tucks his into the photograph's envelope. The girl hides hers under the lining of her shawl. The slips are warm, as if the engine of the world had breathed on them. When the conductor returns the key to the pocket, he has no mark of the journey on his face. He simply calls in a voice like a whistle. The train's number. The girl still has one last thought, a sting of impatience. What if she stayed? What if she stepped back and tried to change the argument that never ended? The conductor places his hand on her shoulder with a gentleness that does not need consent. Winter's Gate waits for certain things, he says, which is neither warning nor comfort. Some doors open only when someone is ready to leave. The train pulls forward. Outside, the town unminds itself. Faces in the crowd lose coherence. The lanterns flutter and become only lights again. The photograph in the young man's hand fogs over until there is nothing but gray. The elderly woman hears the man on the platform say in a voice that sounds like leaves, "You were always on time." And she believes him because time is a thing that runs on tracks here. They reach the next station, no longer Winter's Gate, but another name, stamped in frost on a sign they cannot read. The passengers step off. Behind them, the carriage is empty. The conductor closes the ornate compartment. The drawer clicks gone. He walks the length of the train, checks each seat, then steps into the corridor and sits in a spotlight of moonlight where the floor finally gives a sigh, and the frost unwinds like a ribbon. In the years after, people in the town tell different versions of the night the Winter's Gate train came. One man swears he saw his mother stand on the platform, waving a handkerchief. A woman claims she left a folded slip under her pillow and woke with the knowledge of her brother's handwriting. A pastor says the train is simply a metaphor for grief. A child runs home with cheeks burning from the cold and says he found a coin on the sill with, engraved, a single word, "Remember." Those who ride the train say it is no ghost and no miracle, but some necessary commerce between the living and what they cannot carry. Those who never ride it say it is a warning. Some things you keep because they keep you, and some things you must fold away before the ice sets. Typical stories from Winter's Gate circulate in the market. A carpenter who left his toolbox and returned to find a new plane he never owned. A woman who opened one of the slips and spent the rest of her life learning to play the melody she had only hummed in her sleep. Whatever the truth, people agree on one small detail. On the morning after the train comes, the town's horizon is clearer. The frost lifts like a curtain. The noise of the town thins until you can hear very faintly the echo of footsteps that were once footsteps and now belong to another kind of map. If you want a cold, quiet ghost that does not scream or haunt rooms, but rearranges the weight of your days, read this story on a night when your windows rim with ice. Notice the breath you make in the air. Keep somewhere small and secret a folded slip of paper. Memory has a cadence, and sometimes in winter, the world lends you a train to put it on. I am a damaged man. I've been exposed to things that no human should witness. I've gotten to know fear that only those standing before death itself experienced. Yet I am here. I am obviously not normal anymore. Rarely any human would trough this horror and stay perfectly sane. I am only a skeleton of someone I used to know. Last week or so, I've been trying to deal with the damage my life has had on my sanity. And just as I was getting ready to propel myself back into the reality most of you live in, I had another flashback. Another memory of me and my grandmother. I suppose that the normal world will have to do without me. I was 6 years old when the war started in my country. My parents were lucky enough to get us, themselves, brother and me, out of the affected region just before all the borders shut down. My grandparents unfortunately stayed behind. My grandpa died during the war, and it took 3 years before my grandma was able to get out of there. She came to live with us until the war ended. One weekend, my dad decided to take us skiing. My grandma was paranoid as always, and she demanded that she come with us. My mom wasn't feeling well, so the plan was made that she stayed at home while my dad and grandma took my brother and me to the nearby mountain, about a 30-minute drive. We used to have a small wooden cabin up there, and weather looked nice that day, so you could say that all the stars aligned for it to happen. It started off as an awesome day. I ate a lot of snow falling all over the place, but it was fun nonetheless. My dad and brother were skiing with me while my grandma's watchful eye followed us from the bottom of the ski path. "It looks like a storm may be coming," my grandma said, looking up at the sky that was indeed getting darker and darker. "One more time, Dad, please, please, please," my brother cried. I guess he liked skiing. 3 of us went to the top for one more take. My brother went first. Halfway down the hill, he screamed like a wounded animal. Dad jumped on his skis and yelled, "Stay here," before going down after my bro. The day was getting darker, so I couldn't see perfectly, but I did recognize Dad picking my brother up and slowly carrying him down the hill. I guess the fun was over. I decided not to scare my father and grandma any more than they already were. So I took off my skis and started walking down the hill. By the time I got to the bottom, only my grandma was waiting. Our car was gone. "Your brother tore his knee," she said, looking very upset, as every grandma would be, I suppose. "Your dad took him to the hospital, so we will have to wait in the cabin." Besides the fear for my bro, I really didn't mind this whole situation. I loved spending time with my grandma, and I loved our cabin. We walked inside it and lit the gas lamp that was hanging by the door. Mountain was scarcely populated with weekend-only cabins, so bringing the electricity all the way up was unnecessary. Plus, the nearest neighbor was miles away. I kind of liked it that way. I liked the smell of burning wood in our fireplace. It felt so comfortable. My parents would often bring us there, and we would have what we called scary nights, where they would tell us urban horror legends. It was awesome. Cabin itself was fairly small. It was only one room, well lit by the powerful lamp. In the far right corner was the kitchen that was made up of sink and fire-powered stove. Back wall held the fireplace, around which was a couch and 2 comfortable chairs. There was a window on each of the 4 walls. I sat down in one of the chairs, and Grandma started the fire. While still worried about my brother, I couldn't help but smile at the prospect of spending the night in my favorite place in the world. "Looks like the storm is really close," my grandma said, looking through the kitchen window. "Perhaps your dad may not make it back tonight." This was way before cell phones, so any form of communication was non-existent. "That's okay, I don't mind sleeping here," I said, jumping excitedly in an oversized chair. "Yeah," my grandma said with a worried tone, while still analyzing the outside world. "I suppose we'll have to." We always kept cans of food stashed under the sink for emergencies, and those quickly became our dinner. Tomato soup and some veggies warmed up on real fire. It tasted better than any fancy restaurant I would ever eat at. "Is my brother going to be okay?" I looked up at my grandma while sucking in the last bit of tomato soup. "Your brother will be just fine," she said, still looking worried. "He will be okay." "I called a chair," I yelled, claiming that piece of furniture as my sleeping accommodation that night. My grandma offered me a smile and brought a blanket to cover me up. I was exhausted from all the activities, so I fell asleep quickly after the meal. I woke up a few hours later just to see my grandma standing by the window. She was standing by the window that was to the left of the entrance door. Even from where I was and in a poor lighting, I could tell she was shaking. I thought she was cold, so I got up and brought her my blanket. "Here, Grandma, you can have it. I'm too hot anyways," I said, offering her a blanket that was as useless as a flashlight without batteries. "Grandma?" I asked again, receiving no response. Then I looked through the window. Two things became quickly apparent to me. The snowstorm arrived in full force, and there was someone outside. "Who is that man?" I asked, grabbing her hand. Since snow was falling down so hard that it seemed like God wanted us buried alive, Elle wasn't able to see much about this person other than the fact that he was wearing a suit. His suit was so black that it contrasted the whiteness of snow almost perfectly. My grandma didn't answer. "Should we let him in?" I asked, not thinking about our encounter with a person of similar looks a few years earlier. She never took her eyes off the man. Snow slowed for a short second, only enough to reveal more about the man in question. He was facing us some 10 yards away. He was wearing a black top hat, and he was leaning on a black umbrella stuck in the ground. He wasn't moving. Then he turned around very gracefully and walked away. "Okay, listen, Milos," my grandma said, kneeling down. "Tonight, you may see some people who aren't alive anymore." Still bursting with child's innocence, I smiled. "This is one of the scary nights. It is, isn't it?" I asked, extremely excited. No, she said, grabbing my head with both of her hands. "This is serious. You will see some people from our past that you may remember." Her face changed to a serious "I am not fucking with you" expression. "You're going to be scared, but I need you to not cry, and mostly I need you not to talk to them." "But I don't understand," I said, being more concerned than amused at that point. "Just do it for me. You can do that, can't you?" She took her hand through my long curly hair, calming my fears down, even for just a second. "Yes, Grandma. Good boy." She stood up and looked through the window again. The man was gone. Since nothing happened for a good half hour, I went back to the chair and started dozing off. After an hour or so of napping, I awoke to check on Grandma. She was still looking through the window next to the entrance door. I quickly scanned through the rest of the cabin, only to notice a figure in the kitchen window. I wasn't sure if I was seeing things, so I decided to sneak away slowly towards it and check before alarming my grandma. It indeed was a figure. It was one of my neighbor's kids, who I played with so many times. I was still somewhat sleeping when I saw him, so it took me a minute to remember he drowned 3 months ago. Apparently he went with his parents to the seaside. Parents fell asleep in the sun. He wandered away in the water, and current got him. It was a collective effort of fishermen and people from the beach, but they found him hours later. Kids on my street said that he was completely blue and bloated when they pulled him out on the beach. He seemed fine to me. "Grandma, look, Daddo is here," I yelled, pointing at the window. My grandma turned around very fast and almost ran across the room. She stood next to me while we both looked at my friend who I thought was lost forever. "Why did Mom tell me he died?" I asked her and noticed that Dado was mostly motionless. The only thing that was moving were his eyes, as he was going from Grandma to me and back. "He is dead, Milos," she said, holding my hand. "He is dead. Remember, I told you not to talk to any of them." As she said that, Dado knocked on the window. It startled both of us. "Hey, Los, let me in. It's freezing out here," my friend yelled while still knocking at the window. He called me Los. He seemed a little more blue. I looked up at my grandma and she waved her head. "Let's go sit down." When we sat down, I tried to get an explanation from her. "Who are they, Grandma?" I asked in most polite, curious tone any child could use. "You will understand one day. For now, let's just make it to the morning." She got up and went back to the main window. Dado was still just standing behind the kitchen glass. Only he looked even more blue now. Then I noticed someone in the window on the left wall. "Who is that?" I asked, pointing at the person looking inside our cabin. Grandmother slowly walked towards it. I joined her. It was a lady I didn't recognize. She wore one of those old-fashioned fancy dresses, the kind that you wore to a banquet. The dress was so white that it even stood out in a snowstorm. She had white, elbow-length clothes on. That lady had a really pretty, although pale face, partially hidden under the long, curly black hair. She also had one of those big, old-fashioned hats. She was smiling. "Hello, Dana," she said to my grandma. I looked up, but I already knew my grandmother wasn't going to respond. "It's been a while," lady said. She looked at me. "And who do we have here? Why don't you let me in so I can meet him?" she said, tilting her head as if she was really expecting an answer back. "You're a big boy, aren't you, Milos?" the person asked me. "Let's go back," Grandma said, grabbing my hand once again and taking me to the fireplace. "Who is that?" I asked while glancing at the lady. She was still radiating whiteness even from the distance, although I did notice that red spots on her dress started appearing. "That is my sister," Grandma said with tears in her eyes. "How'd she die?" I asked, getting a surprised look from my grandma. I suppose she didn't expect me to understand this quickly, that she was also dead. "She died at childbirth. Her baby died as well." "No, she did not!" screamed the lady, almost punching the window. I was scared that she'd break the glass and crawl in our cabin. "Don't listen to her, she just wants our reaction," Grandma said, hugging me. As she hugged me, I noticed someone in the window by the entrance door. Is that Grandpa?" I asked, squeezing her hard. She turned around and I swear I could see pain in her eyes. Tears started coming down her cheeks, and she looked down to the ground as if she was looking for comfort amongst the boards of the wooden floor. "Yes, that's Grandpa," she whispered. I started walking to the window. On my way, I looked to the other two windows and noticed that Lady's dress was now more red than white, and that Dado was now unnaturally blue and bloated, almost resembling some human-like balloon. Needless to say, I was petrified. I just stood in front of the window and looked at my grandpa. He seemed normal, although pale. I loved my grandpa, man, and it took all I had not to try to say something to him. It was almost as if he could tell what I was thinking. "You love me, don't you, Milos?" he asked, smiling. "Then why would you let me freeze out here? Come on, open the door for your grandpa." I looked back at my silent grandma sitting back on the couch. She just sadly nodded to tell me that I should remain quiet. He knocked on the window. "Come on, look what I got," he said, pulling one of those 25-cent machine bubble gums that I loved so much and that he used to get for me all the time. I smiled but refused to speak. He kept knocking on the window. Then Dado started knocking again. The lady in blood-soaked dress followed. There I was, standing in a small cabin with my grandma, surrounded by people we loved, but who weren't members of the living world anymore. And that knocking was becoming louder and louder. I couldn't take it anymore, so I screamed, "Stop!" It did. They all stopped knocking and just stood there. Then I noticed the same man in a black suit come behind my grandpa. He was standing directly behind him, leaning over his shoulder. He rested his jaw on my grandpa's left shoulder and smiled. Then he walked to the left. He came behind Dado and tapped his head, still smiling. Finally, he got to the lady and laid his hand on her belly. She looked sad. He turned towards the window and looked straight at me. "You won't open or talk, will you now?" he asked me, putting his face to the glass. No fog appeared on the window, so I assumed he wasn't breathing. I just shook my head while my grandma was squeezing my shoulder so hard that I got a bruise later. "I'll rigdy-do then," he said, and knocked on the window with the top of his umbrella. At that moment, all three of the people who weren't alive anymore started walking away towards the snowstorm. The man stood there for a few more seconds, sending my grandma a dangerously threatening look, and then walked away. She broke down and started weeping on the couch. I fell asleep in her lap, trying to comfort her. By the time I woke up, the sun was up and snowstorm was long gone. Soon after, I heard an engine noise from my dad's old Volkswagen. My dad walked in, and I excitedly told him all about that happened to us last night. He listened carefully, then smiled, and while tapping my head, asked, "Another one of our scary nights, eh?" My grandma forced a smile and nodded. On our way to the car, I noticed something bright blue in the snow. I ran and picked it up. It was my favorite bubble gum.
Now remember, keep your lights on and your doors locked. Then subscribe for more horrifying true stories.